All right, we are syncing for the interview with Jon. They all have a mic on, recording internally and directly into the cameras. Just syncing audio, 3, 2, 1.
You guys ready? Yeah. Guys, today we are joined by the incredibly talented Jon Bellion, a singer, songwriter, rapper, producer who's left a massive mark on the music industry and also soon the basketball world. Halsey, the list goes on, right? Welcome, Jon Bellion.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man.
That list goes
Dude.
way longer than
Oh my
that, too.
goodness, yeah, it's a short introduction. I feel like we should kind of like explain how we got here.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a good way to kind of start this off as we roll into conversational pieces.
Totally.
It's actually funny, like, I've been listening to a lot of your stuff for years now. My wife introduced me to your stuff when I was in college. And I told you the story, funny enough, how we were listening to the new stuff, the Kid Again release, and the secret link that you had posted out there. Like, we saw it right away. We watched the behind the scenes of the making and the story, watched the podcast with Janko. The timing of everything is insane. That's all we've been talking about.
Crazy.
But, you know, shout out to our management team and Adam, man. Like, you and your team reached out, and we just happened to be in New York at the same time. We met for dinner that night, and you happen to be a fan of the next chapter, which I think is amazing because we're all literally fans of your work. So it's just like this appreciating art over here, and it's just cool to finally do this. And obviously we'll get into more, but
yeah, oh yeah, I was it was kind of one of the craziest. We keep bringing it up of how it just ends up happening. Like, it's probably about almost a year ago now at this point. I've just started watching everything online with YouTube, just even with my sons. Just you watch a lot of the NBA stuff, and it becomes kind of rigid. It becomes kind of this like scheduled thing that's just like you just think there's no other options. And then kind of just stumbling upon a lot of the stuff that you've worked on and what you guys started putting together. I just started following you guys doing everything, whether it be the park runs and I was just watching this thing grow hand over fist. I'm like literally, I felt like I was a fan, like discovering an artist for the first time before they got big, So as everything starts to like really, really explode, I was on the couch with my wife, and I'm like, man, if they keep this is growing and they're posting at such a rate that I'm like, man, they must be taking every single cent that they own and slamming it into the next season, because the next season was growing so quick, hand over fist. I'm like, there's a lot of players. They got to get paid. I'm like, how are they doing this? I'm like, they really must be doing this for the absolute love of what they do, which then got me even more into it as a fan, which then kind of like leveled up my respect for you guys as creators and what you were doing. So I just kind of became obsessed. I mean, I was like obsessed with the optics of like what this could be. Like we were saying the other night, like this is almost like the UFC and boxing. It's two different things. And what the UFC has done, I look at you guys in that same light, in that same space, because there's a lot of players, a lot of talent who came up that will never have the chance. They just their cards were never dealt the right way, or they come from a place where opportunity might not be the same as others, or wherever they're from, or they might just have game that's just never been looked at in the right light between management and whatever else. So you guys are providing something for a whole community of basketball players, and it feels like I know these guys. It's like you guys have somehow captured the dog energy of when homies just play.
yeah.
When best friends play and they're ready to kill each other, and then they get over it, and beef kind of might carry on and might get intense, but there's this thing that's just a natural way of life for people who play ball. And there's a culture and there's a thing that hasn't been touched or represented in a way that I think that you guys are doing it, where you're taking the rawness, but you're also developing a brand in a professional sense, where it's like responsible meets raw. And I think it's going to be tough for the NBA to compete, and that's my lowly take.
I always bring that analogy up with the UFC, and I always say this. I know you've heard me say the same thing a bunch of times, but like for a very long time, boxing was the thing. You have the main cards, you got the main event, you've got undercards, whatever, and it's the only like pay-per-view combat sport that was out there for years, like hundreds of years,
Yep.
And then the UFC came around, and mind you, the UFC is only 25 years old to date, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yep.
And I think it's something about how they innovated that combat sports world,
Yes.
but still kept all those beautiful things about the pay-per-view, the
Yep.
press conferences, the
Yep.
trash talk and stuff. And
Human
it's just
energy. Like
exactly
who these people are, you know?
that exact formula is what we're going for on this live stream pay-per-view, but for 1v1 basketball. It's the same thing.
Yep.
It will work. It's just a matter of the talent, finding the talent, like finding the people that can compete at a high level that
Yep.
will continue to progress their game, maybe even be able to have the social media guy that's really good at basketball, that's growing in the next chapter space,
Yep.
compete against an NBA player that wants to take a chance and do 1v1s and whatnot. But
Like you were saying, I mean, a guy can make his entire season in one pay-per-view.
yeah, I mean, you've got to explain that. Like, explain the Derrick Rose thing.
Well, I want to be correct on my numbers as well for his
okay.
last season.
Well-
So maybe not Derrick Rose necessarily.
Okay, but let's say it's like somebody's last season.
Yeah.
And that's like
So
a general contract.
yeah, you look at an NBA player that's right around like a $4 to $5 million contract per year, who might be a filthy one-on-one player, but is not really getting the minutes in a game, or maybe he's coming to the back end of his career. Like $4 million of a salary for an 82 game season. You're on the road, you're practicing every single day, you're away from your family all the time. You could come step onto the TNC space and you could play a pay-per-view against Devontae Friga, right? Like, so imagine you get like a Derrick Rose versus Devontae Friga, and you can make you could make what you make in a season on a pay-per-view by having like 150,000 fans come together and pay for the pay-per-view, along with 4 or 5 other monster matchups that are still the undercards, because players like a Derrick Rose, that'd be a massive deal to be on here. But I think they could make that in like a 20 to 30 minute game, what they make in a season.
And the NBA doesn't have when they become such an institution and they're so interwoven within countries, it becomes this thing where they have something to really, really maintain, hyper maintain. There's this almost expectation for every single player to kind of be have a blanketed attitude, which is, I think, the big advantage, because like boxing comes off as a bit, in the past, it comes off as a bit just kind of not dated, but it starts to lose its thing because you start to not dehumanize anybody who's boxing, but you start to become beholden to like being a certain way or not bringing 100% of who you are. And without things getting like absolutely out of control and silly, I think there's a world where you guys just have such an advantage. Because again, it's like same thing with the labels right now. Like the labels are like signing artists and taking their masters to tell them to TikTok more. It's like TikTok is the thing. It's a platform. The UFC is the answer to the antiquated X over here. It's like you guys are the answer to the antiquated X over here. It's like from TJass all the way to you to a bunch of different people, you guys are now a highway for attention and for funneling where the culture goes, because everybody's their own self-reporter now. It's like even the news now is like, even if you look at ABC or you look at people who have really poppin' Twitter feeds who are just up on the news, a lot of people are going in that direction. So like you guys are now the sports representation of all these dinosaurs kind of falling down.
Yeah.
And I think culture is going to have a giant upswing, because when I wake up in the morning, the reason why I wanted to make sure that I wanted to support the community and really put my money where my mouth is and Mark Cuban the fuck out of the beginning of this, and I say that out loud, is simply off the fact that I'm watching you guys and I'm going, when I wake up sometimes, I actually forgot what happened between Russell Westbrook and so-and-so, because they squashed it so quick because of the fines in the NBA and whatever else that I don't remember who's talking what, because it usually ends up fizzling. And you watch a playoff game and when they got beef and whatever, it's super interesting. But there's a world where I found myself thinking about Cam and Day-Day. I found myself, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm like eating dinner, I'm like, wow, I wonder if the next chapter posted. This was 3 weeks into finding you guys. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even watch my game tonight. I didn't watch the Knicks.
That's crazy.
But, and just the fact that that even happened for a 3-week span, even the fact that that happened at all, that something took the real estate in my mind of, I'm really interested to see what Keyshawn does against Lat. I'm really interested in that. Like,
Are you?
straight up, like, what's gonna happen here? The fact that that's a thing, you have an advantage over it really becomes a human thing. You're watching humans. You're not watching untouchable heroes, which is great. But it's almost like old rock stars. It's like the new rock stars are people who are, I don't necessarily subscribe, but it's like, see what I had for dinner, and then you know these motherfuckers. You know your favorite artists. Yeah. They're posting constantly. That's the wave of where it's going. And a lot of these players simply can't because they'd end up getting fined for it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And you guys are like totally circumvent that. It's nuts. And I think on any day, kind of same thing with boxing, kind of same thing with UFC. It's just like one position of the chin, and on any day, someone's hitting the mat. Any day. If you catch the wrong angle on the wrong day, eat the wrong breakfast with the wrong dude, any underdog can win. And that's what I think the next chapter is, like just a giant underdog story overall from a brand perspective, but also in the 1v1 space, you have an opportunity to really mix somebody, for something to happen. Because like you guys were saying, like some of the shot choices are insane, but if you only have 4 dribbles, you have to put up a really exciting shot. It almost forces clippable content. But you're also watching hyper-focused players who are at the top of their craft that may have never gotten the shine that they needed to, or are on their way to getting their shine or whatever. Because as the platform grows, like you said, it's going to be like, could you imagine? We don't have to post it now, but it's just like in my mind, it's like if Kyrie wants to play Lillard and they just want to make a $5 million bag out of it and take one trip down to the TNC gym, clip that for the future too. This will be a great viral one in 2 years.
No, it definitely will happen.
You know what I mean? It's like when those two guys say like, you know what, that's my homie, or I don't like the guy, but I want to finally settle this once and for all. The NBA can't even facilitate the language that might be said. The NBA can't even facilitate the crowd that would want to come. It's like they could facilitate it from a numbers perspective, but they wouldn't get the raw energy of what it looks like in an actual gym where people are actually playing. And that's why I'm like, I'm like, yo, that's when I called you guys, I said to my wife, I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, they wouldn't even be interested in me helping out. I'm like, they probably don't even, I said, the only thing I would see is that their seasons are growing so fast that I can't imagine. They have to be dumping the money back into the seasons every single time. So maybe I'll hit them up and just say, hey man, if you guys needed some leeway or some help, I want to be somebody who wasn't a fan and was trying to be on some position myself next to it to look good. I was like, how can I just help? Like, I just want to help the situation because I know those kids. I grew up with those kids. Yeah. I played with the kids who've across in Brentwood that were supposed to go D1, but something happens on their grades or something happens on this or whatever. Not that every single player has to fit that mold, but I just feel connected to those players because I am those players, because my friends argue and we play, and we've been playing since we were 10 years old, 11 years old.
You know, like last night you mentioned how well you understand the boat that we're in right now because of how you came up yourself on YouTube and how you went about that. And I feel like you really understand what's going on here. So it makes sense for you to see that we're pushing season to season and we may not have the funds because realistically we don't.
Yep.
And it's because we pour everything back in.
And I think people are looking at the monetization of YouTube and they just see the word monetization of YouTube.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's like they assume they would assume that there's just like there's money rolling in a way that there's even a chance for you guys to be pocketing more and not paying players and whatever. It's physically impossible. If you look at the way the YouTube pays out, that's why I was talking to my wife. I'm like, you know what? It might be worth hitting them up. But I see it in such a way where I was like, this shit's gonna explode. And I'm like, they probably are in talks with, I literally called you guys and you were like, no, it's just Grayson, Scotty, and Frigas. Like, it's just us. And we're booking everything ourselves. We're making sure the players are taken care of in the Airbnb. We're making sure there's a payout and there's a pot and that's all we got. I'm like, I said to you guys, I was like, the NBA hasn't called. Clip this shit up. The NBA has not hit you guys. That's blasphemous. That's crazy. To see the way the virality's happening and the numbers, data points, whatever you want to call it, because simply the millions of motherfuckers who go to the park who never got the opportunity to live inside that space, there's more drama in one day at the park than there is in an entire press conference for the Timberwolves. There's more natural human drama. And the technology, whatever you want to call it, is like, we're about to watch that because you guys are setting it up in a way to have a professional platform for that to happen. And I'm sorry, I get super passionate about it.
It's the platform. Like going back to the money thing, is like most people know YouTube as like people are YouTubers, right?
Yep.
Easier for that vlogger that everybody knows to record their life and edit their stuff and make money off of that and show that, and you know they're making money. But we are a built platform that is focused on paying these people to play. You know, it's not like we're just the next chapter and it's like we're recording these videos and we get paid for this. Like, the money goes into the seasons or back to the players, and that's it.
Yep.
So the whole money mix-up is like people thinking it's one thing when it's really not.
Yeah, absolutely. Bro, it's the same thing. Even like now that I have, it's kind of a jump, but like the beginning of my career, I signed a pub deal because I knew I had to make hits in order to pay for my artist shit. So I wrote a couple records went #1, and I just used that to funnel it back into shooting videos, making the content, and doing the whole thing. And then did the artist thing for a couple of years, figured out how my contract worked, ended up getting my master's back more recently. But the last 6 years of making hits, that's just kind of funneled back into an artist project. It's almost like I wanted to get my master's back just so I could spend my own money on making sure that this thing gets off the ground. And I'm like, I just relate so heavily that it's almost like you guys are just front loading every situation because you have a dedication to the fans to make sure that the experience every time after time, is growing and there's no stagnation. Which is like, that's when I knew, let me at least just poke around just to see if there's any way that you guys could just, some sort of involvement, whether it be financial or whatever. And to be honest with you, I literally feel like Mark Cuban. I literally, I'm like, yo, if someone's not knocking down your guys' door to be like, how can we get involved? How can we support? How crazy. Clip it. I'm telling you, play this in 5 years. Play this one. Don't drop this one yet. Play this in 5 years. People are nuts for not seeing what this is. The fact that the phone's not ringing off the hook, some random motherfucker named John from Long Island is like, I'm in. No one else is gonna fucking, okay. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's pretty unreal. Like,
I'm in the studio with huge artists. So a lot of times, 2 different times. I'm not gonna say any names because I don't feel like calling their fucking people and whatever, but 2 different times. They usually have the NBA. When people are in the studio, there's usually a big TV over the speakers. In the Westlake and you know, Jungle City and whatever, bigger studios, they always got the NBA on. 2 different times from 2 different artists. I walk in, I'm like, you know about the next chapter? You know about Burks? You know about Cam? You know blah, 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 blah? Yeah, I just been watching. I don't know that they argue and it's on some drama shit, but we just like check in every 2-3 days when they post because we want to see who's going at whose neck. I was like, that's all I had to hear. 2 weeks ago, I was with my sons, and my sons are like, oh yeah, break his ankles. Like, I'm like, man, something's happening. It's crazy.
Must have been the video you were playing in Detroit.
Yo,
Relax.
this guy dropped old boy twice. Unbelievable.
Talk to me, Scotty.
Yeah, no, I deal with this a lot, like internally, again, to bring up the money thing of what everybody thinks that YouTube is, because for a long time, everybody's used to just like a YouTube page being like an individual creator, and this creator's living this influential lifestyle. You follow them on Instagram, they got all these nice cars, all this stuff. But we're actually running a business as large as like a professional organization, not to like the NBA and things like that, but we're trying to grow a professional league.
Absolutely.
On YouTube, and we're trying to support 100+ athletes a year. So like when we drop these videos, I ask a lot of the fans, I'll be like, hey, how much do you think, like, because when we talked about doing this pay-per-view, people are like, oh, this is a money grab, this is that. And I'll ask them, like, do you know how much a video makes roughly? And they'll be like, oh, 10K every video.
For 100,000
For like 100,000 views, right? And in reality, like 100,000 views, like, and I have no problem showing our cards so that you know who we are. 100K is going to make you anywhere between like $600 to like $1,200, right? So now you got $600 to $1,200. One, we're going to make sure the players get paid. We're going to make sure there's a prize money on the game. We have 4 videographers there. We have 2 referees. We have 2 commentators.
5 editors.
We have 5 editors. We have a graphic designer. We also got to pay for that person's flight. We got to give them a hotel. We feed them. We take care of that. We have a vehicle rental for transportation, and we got to rent the gym, and we got to cover insurance. So tell me how, $800 to $1,200 is paying for that. It's not, but what is the sponsorships that help support us as well, and the merchandise that sells. So like, when players, not just directly like players and whatnot, but it's a really tough industry to have exist on YouTube. We grow this fan base. This fan base is begging for it, but they just have to support us a little bit outside of YouTube for us to take that next massive leap. And that's why we're going in that direction of the pay-per-view, because some of these seasons cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we have a very small team with a lot of people that are working for free, just getting by the best that they possibly can. Guys are working other jobs to make all this stuff happen. And I just feel like a lot of people think that we're just eating all this and profiting and living this luxurious life, but we're like genuinely not yet, because we don't do this out of the money that's coming in. We do it because like we want to have a future. We want to take care of our families, decades long, provide millions of opportunities for people to play. And YouTube is where we're growing our market, and we're gaining almost 1,000 subscribers every single day. And we're just trying to make that next leap and provide something that's on the NBA status.
Well, I feel like that's just going to be an interesting talking point. And the fact that you guys are open about the growth of what that is the same thing as like an artist that comes from an area where there's not a lot of money, whether it be rural or outside of New York or whatever. When you start to make it, you start to kind of have to hold on to the rawness or the energy or the hunger or the whatever. And you guys are coming from a space where it's all raw, it's all energy, it's all hunger. So it's like to watch you guys still do the city runs where you were inviting people to come into the cities to give people their chances while the platform still grows. It's like, I think your concern for the regular Joe basketball player, your concern for putting people on, it's just an interesting thing to be like, there has to be somebody in the space that breaks through the thing. What breaks through the thing means in today's day and age between live streaming and what income means or whatever, that's yet to be seen. But that will be, I think, your openness and vulnerability with the fans who've been there from day one to say, what do you guys want to see? What can we do for you guys? It is about that fan, and it is about the basketball player. I think you guys front loading that and not collecting and making sure everything goes back into the seasons to make it is what it is, you're going to be reaping those benefits down the line. It's just that the public has to have some sort of understanding that, like, if someone's going to break through, someone's got to break through. And at a certain point, that's when I thought in my brain to say, let me hit these guys up to put a little fuel to the fire, because not a lot of people have the opportunity to like, the way they're operating with their business, somebody just needs to come in who believes. Not to me to position myself next to anything or whatever. It's just like, and I'm also not an idiot. Starving artists die hungry. It's like, I believe in what this is. This is an opportunity. But at a certain point in the community, you have to find a way to keep the spirit of it, but it has to grow because it deserves to grow because of the work that you guys have put in. And there's a lot of players out there that went D1. What is it? 0.0 something of D1 players end up going to the league.
Yeah,
it's like
it's under 1%.
People in the league.
How many dudes in D1 could have been from Jeremy Lin all the way to Lillard? It's like, how many of those dudes exist out there right now? Maybe they got a knee injury. Maybe something happened in the last season of their shit, from COVID all the way to injuries. It's like, there is no space or opportunity for this. So it's almost like, I feel like I owe it to guys that I came up with, or dudes that I watched in high school, or kids that got deals out of high school or whatever, that we were around in New York, that we used to play at the Rucker or whatever. Like, man, if I'm blessed enough to be in a position where I've kind of become that I'm in the NBA of what I do, I'm like, these guys just need the NBA opportunity to be the platform to help out. And I think just on the way up, in my lowly opinion, it's the same thing as blowing up. Y'all forgot about blah, blah, blah. Y'all for da-da-da-da, because they don't understand the financial workings of how this whole thing is going. They don't understand the self-sacrifice you guys have taken in order for that to happen. And no one paid me to say this shit. I'm just what it is. It's like, at a certain point, though, someone has to be knighted to get to the space that you guys need to get to. And hopefully you guys carry the responsibility of what comes with that. But I think you will, because you've been responsible businessmen and you've given back to from park runs all the way to the city runs, all the way to the 1v1s, the seasons, the Airbnbs, the thing growing. I think it's just time for someone to finally break through that ceiling. And I don't even know what that ceiling is. I just know that, like I said, there's more drama in one day at a park up the road from me in Brentwood than there is in a whole press conference for a whole day between two teams. How you put that on a level where the talent still exists at a super high level and the talent pool is believable, it's just exciting. Who knows where, because talent can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's not MTV making music anymore. It's not just the NBA that breeds basketball players. To have another option, to have another side option that's just as exciting, like the boxing and UFC, man. But at a certain point, it's like the UFC is the perfect middle ground between watching two dudes fist fight in an alley on an iPhone camera, and then you got boxing. It's like the UFC has found a way to still have an energy or still have a thing that makes it this raw human story, raw human emotion. It's like you guys are not filming 1v1s in the back of a restaurant in Little Italy somewhere, but you're also not the NBA. So then the genius is like, how are you guys gonna maintain the energy? Well, it's like you guys are literally doing that as we speak. How fucking exciting. And again, no one's paying me to say this shit. I'm just like, yo, I'll be the first one to bump my chest for the community and say some shit because I think it's super fucking obvious.
Well, if someone was paying you to say it, it wouldn't be us. That's why you're here.
You have to look at this guy.
That's hilarious. That's funny. Grayson's dying over there.
That's incredible.
Man.
Can we get into the money side?
Let's get it.
Can we talk about the money side? Because I feel like,
Sorry, I had one quick statement.
This guy starts taking.
Can
we get into the money side?
I think if you take the top 10, this is gonna be a bold statement.
Okay.
Top 10 scoring point guards in the NBA and match them up to, if we found the top 10 1v1 players in the universe, I think the one-on-one players in the universe would outperform the top 10 NBA players in ones.
All right, wait. Top 10 score. Like you're talking about Kevin Durant?
No. I'm just talking about the.
You said point guards.
If they're in the league, then if they're on Kevin Durant level, they're in the league. But I'm saying like a 6'1", right? Like we got guys in this space that I think would do.
So you're talking about Nas versus Kyrie,
something like that,
or like Rob Cologne versus
like BJ and
like
Drew
Darius
Holiday.
Garland versus Rob Cologne.
Yeah,
I feel like there's a world where it's like, all right, I understand NBA players are really good. I'm not an idiot. I know they're really good. I know that they work on their 1v1 game, but the 5v5 aspect is real basketball. I'm not saying 1v1 isn't real basketball yet, but I think that I think that this sport is like really becoming real. You know, 1v1's always been around. Like you always 1v1 your buddy at the park, or like 1v1 workout drills in college, or your team does 1v1s, whatever. But professionalizing it and making it a real thing means that these guys that are in the 1v1 league are strictly going to work on their 1v1 bag. Like me, I am playing in the 1v1s. Like when I work out, I'm not really doing a lot of 5v5 stuff personally. I'm doing like mainly all 1v1 workouts, and I feel like over the course of time, if I'm continuing to play better talent and bettering my game, I can go into these games maybe against these NBA guys and like either hold my own or win that game. And I would never go into a game thinking I'm going to lose. If I'm matched up against somebody same height, same weight, I don't really care what their skill level is on a 5v5 or in the NBA, because this is 1v1 basketball. It's completely different. And for those people that are like, oh, they're in the league, like you're tripping, you've never played a real 1v1 that's like meaningful, that you go to war. Like you said yesterday, dude, you can hit 3 or 4 threes in a row in a 1v1 game with 2s and 3s, next chapter rules, and you're up by 12. And you're going to 30. Like the game's halfway there.
And how many times in 5v5s at the park, at a college practice, do you hear two guys going at it, they start bumping, and they go, see me in 1v1s. I don't want to hear that shit, see me in 1v1s. It's like the ultimate test of some sort of like, you know, machismo, ego, whatever it is that drives an athlete, that you just, I want to say I'm the best because I want to say I'm the best. In the Jordan documentary, he's like, why you want to jump in our card game for $5? Jordan's like, I want to say I put your money in my pocket. Like, that's it. It's like when you play 5-on-5, it's like, play me ones. It's like, well, ones ain't real. It's like, I want to say that you can't escape anywhere. You can't get your center to come set you a pick. There's no pick and roll. There's no ISO, me and you. You know what I'm saying? That's exciting.
I hate when people say that stuff about 1v1 basketball, dude. It's like, I feel like it's an easy escape from not lining it up. Like, if you're really about it, if you really have back, just like line it up. Let's run the ones. Win or loss, like, you tell a lot about a man by the way they carry themselves after a win and a loss. And I feel like a lot of people don't want to be that person. Unlike me, I don't know how to carry myself after a loss.
Yep.
And I feel like that's
and there's no one else to
essentially what
blame.
it comes down to.
There's no one else to blame.
Exactly.
It's like you could say anything in a press conference. And a lot of guys are gracious, and a lot of guys have great attitudes, especially in the NBA. But there's nowhere to. You're not going to say what happened to your center that didn't get his usual 10 rebounds. Like, oh, what happened to you when you got waxed? You know what I mean?
You had a bad shooting day. That guy, he fucking cooked you. Or like, you just learn to adapt. There's so many things about 1v1 basketball that's going to make this sport so entertaining to watch.
Yep.
I'm eager for this 1v1 space to continue to grow, and I think that this is like really the start to a massive, massive industry. I just want to touch on the money side of things. Like, I know we keep talking about, like, we make great money, but we put all of it back in, and I feel like you explained it really good one time on, like, we would do something 1 month, and then YouTube pays out on every month, and then our advertisement pays out 45 to 60 days, and it's like, once we get that, we're using it to fund the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So there's really
Have you guys
never
been strapped for cash for every single season that has started since one?
Yes, I would say we have, this sounds crazy, but like, we've almost zeroed out in our bank account every time we do a season, because we're so confident that it's going to make what it does. And then boom, at the end of it, it's like, holy shit, this made a lot of money. We're calling each other. We're like, yo, this was great. And tomorrow it's at zero.
Yeah,
because we're
it's
playing
like
the next season.
all the credit cards, we pay the players. Like,
I mean, it's literally y'all at Hertz picking up the van and picking up the players. It's not like there's any, like, yeah. Honestly, to me, it'll be interesting just to see the jump. I just think people don't understand what that takes. People don't understand what that takes. It's like, people will look at, like you said, the YouTube numbers or how you guys are growing, or something goes viral, they just equate.
Yeah.
This is $1 million. It's just like, bro, if you knew half of like what goes into content, or what goes into shooting, or what goes into just, many artists have broken it down on what it costs to get the engineer, to be in the studio, to and by the time everything's up, you owe the label tons of money, and you're only making 20 cents to every dollar, 15 cents to every dollar that you make.
Not mad or complaining about the money we're spending. Like, we know ultimately the long term is the goal.
Yep.
And I feel like a lot of the times, like, people would look at this and be like, all right, short term, like, yeah, you're making money, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like we're looking down the road from now, like, how big this can be for the greater good of everybody that's going to be a part of this.
Well, I've said that every 2 years there's a shift, there's a pivot in a culture, whatever exists at that time, because somebody's going to innovate, somebody's going to move to the next idea, fans are going to lose interest, and like, saturation is a huge thing. It happens, I mean, in the YouTube space, right? Like, a couple years ago, it was high school basketball was popping a ton. COVID hit, street ball became a thing. That was popping a ton. Lasted about 2 years. That fell out. Now one-on-ones are becoming a thing. And the reason I feel like all these things are not having longevity is there's not like a hub for it to exist with constant innovation, with the funding that's necessary to take it to that next level.
Absolutely.
So like we mentioned, we got YouTube, and like, so say we do a season and it's posted, we film it in October. We film it in October. We post it in November. We don't get paid for the videos that came out in November until the end of December. And we're still posting a little bit of that season throughout December. So the second paycheck's coming in January. But by the time that finishes and all of that comes out, we already have the next season lined up and going and going. Like, we haven't stopped posting. We've done 500 videos in the last 2 years now. And that's a lot of fucking work. Like, these are you got to plan the entire concept of what it is. You're talking like hundreds of hours of prep before you get there. And then every 30-minute episode is taking 25, 30 hours of work for an editor. You got to put the video into your timelines. You got to import it. You got to proxy this stuff. You're dealing with like 4 or 5 different angles, 4K. Your computer's lagging like crazy, so you got to proxy everything. You're dealing with all these audio files. You got to go in for your graphics, your scoreboard, the animations. And then you got to export. You're exporting. Like, first off, if anybody understands how many gigabytes, like
Terabytes.
This upcoming
Gigabytes.
No, yeah. So there's going to be about 6,000 to 7,000 or 6,000 to 8,000 gigabytes on this next season. So we literally got to buy like a $500 hard drive for like 3 games. So it'll be 3 games, boom, that's on a hard drive. Another 3 games, boom, that's on a hard drive. Like, it's a lot. And the reason why I feel like this is the pivoting point for next chapter, with you seeing the vision and believing in us, because we've always just turned it over and over and over and over and over, and we've never worked off of having the capital to make something where we know it can go. Just going back, when he was in Texas, I went to go film with him in Texas because Grayson wasn't available. And I got into the car and they played Kid Again for like 10 straight times. And I was like,
And this is before we even got in contact. That's insane.
Shout out to Logan and Joe.
I get in the car and I'm sitting in the back of the car and I'm like, do they have like a friendship cult where like this is like their song? Like, I've never heard this song before. Like, why are they playing it 10 straight times? Great fucking song, but like 10 straight times. And then I got hooked on it. And then literally like a few days later, you guys were having dinner and you reached out and
bro, I had my guy reach out. I said to my boy Matt, I said, yo, his name's Devontae Friga. Hit him up. I just want to have a conversation with him. I just want to pick his brain. He was like, all right, I'll hit you back. In my mind, I'm like, they're never gonna even care. They're gonna be so busy. We're in New York. Do you want to come to Brooklyn tomorrow? I was like, fucking got in the car.
It's insane.
Insane.
I'm literally listening to your acoustic stuff every day. Like a lot of that stuff. Like my wife showed me 5 years ago. So it's
you never know, like,
how it.
Dude, my trajectory of what it's been of me kind of walking away and writing big records for other people or whatever. And this is, I'm just saying this as like a factual thing. I just never know. Like, there'll just be days where my brain, I'm like, they probably are not aware in any way of what I've worked on or records I've done that have gone #1 or records I've worked on for myself. I'm like, there's no way. We get to Brooklyn, homie was like, yeah, my wedding, we played you at my wedding, and which is still really blows my mind, because I literally, and I really don't mean this in like in some sort of like, I'm so connected to all these famous people, but I'm with celebrities all the time. I was legitimately like a little giddy rocking with y'all. Like, I was like, at the table, like, I was like, Freaky just 1v1 so-and-so, and like, that's how I know in my mind, I'm a grown-ass 33-year-old man that watches the NBA all the time. That's the signifier in my gut that says this thing is going to be wildly special. Because it's the same thing that when the homie at the park says, fuck you, I just dropped 11 on you, the game was to 21. I scored more than you did. You had no buckets. The second that happens and the game's over, but everybody's got to go back home, everyone in the group chat, all day. And who's the menace in the group chat? Who's not the menace in the group chat? That's not captured. It's not. And when it is captured, I have never seen guys like you take such time and effort to really position it and adjust it as a platform that can professionally help that raw energy get to a place where people's lives can be changed. That's the difference maker. Anybody can bring a camera to the park, and you'll probably catch some really good stuff and whatever, but somehow the way you guys are positioning it into this professional territory while maintaining what it's like at the actual park, it'll be fun to see you guys try to do that balance act, and I'm down for the ride, and it's going to be exciting. But in general, that's how I knew, like, you guys are like your own celebrities to people who, someone who overcomes, if you're watching 5-year-olds play basketball, my son will be, whatever age my son is at, when he goes and plays, and if he drops 20 and some kid's talking shit in his face and he overcomes, the 17 people in that gym just watched Gladiator. Yeah. Because you're just watching someone overcome. That's why shit goes viral, whether it's a kid or it's whatever. you're watching like real time important NBA championship to your brain. Like your brain is watching. When so-and-so makes a statement and then so-and-so tries to back it up, and then these two guys in Titans are going to come together to fight and put their reputation on the line for what it is. In that little moment, you have Shakespeare. And I know that sounds so sappy and heady and over the top, but y'all literally are creating more Shakespeare moments than the NBA. The NBA can do it through advertising and through this guy doesn't like each other and there's beef here. And then on SportsCenter, you hear Stephen A. Smith talk about it for 55 minutes and you don't even hear an opinion from the actual guys in the shit. You guys are like, fuck that shit. Let them both talk about it, say whatever the hell they want, take it to the 1v1s.
Earlier, you were talking about how this space can get saturated, or like the 2 years trending stuff. Will you touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll relate it for you for music. Like, you get a hit song that plays on the radio, but if every time you get in your car, that song's on several times, eventually you're going to be like, I'm going to listen to something else. Because I've just heard it way too much.
Absolutely.
And we've taken the approach of like, when we see that there's a player that's a star coming up in the community, we want to protect them in the sense of not whether they win or they lose, but just the amount of times that you watch them play. And I've even told people, like, look at LeBron James. If LeBron James goes to the Drew League on a random Wednesday night, you're going to watch LeBron James at the Drew League. But if LeBron's going to come to the Drew League on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 5 days in a row, you're going to skip out on one of those days.
Totally.
And it's LeBron James. This isn't watching Moon play 1v1 basketball. Like, that's LeBron James, and you're still willing to skip out on some of those. You might even skip out on 3 of those nights. So the reality of it is, when the community wants to see these guys play more basketball, but the money doesn't equate to the sacrifice that player's doing on their brand to go play that much, because what's going to happen is you're going to have a star come up, everybody's going to want to see him play, he's going to play on several different platforms, and then he's done. Like, he reached his ceiling. Like, once you start showing people in different lights or maybe in different moments, because the fans also don't understand, or they don't really see what happens behind the scenes of, like, some days guys are taking a flight, getting directly off of a flight, playing a one-on-one game against maybe an opponent who also didn't show up, so they randomly just switched this game to make it happen, and the circumstances were rough, and they play the game, and it's presented online, and it looks a certain way, and now people's opinions on the players change because of, you know, things not going according to plan, or the money wasn't right, so they didn't come with the right effort. And it's not really on the athletes to understand the way the YouTube industry works. That's why we try to guide them and protect their mindset and understanding that we're going to help you become your own entrepreneur. We're going to help represent you in the best way. It is on you, when you're not with us, to still protect the way people view you.
Absolutely.
And I just think saturation's been a big thing, because the formula that we're using is not hard to imitate. And it's like, everybody's been playing one-on-ones. We're not the first channel to post one-on-one basketball. Everybody's been playing one-on-ones their whole entire life. But it's just like,
the way we're doing it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And I think what kind of...
it's like you came from a college background, so you played at a super high level. It's like you're understanding both sides of the thing. You've been to the park, you've been to it's the same thing with you. It's like you guys, your come up started from literally nothing. So you're like in real time figuring out how to... Your brain's better than anybody will be like, you know what? This is why people like the one-on-one. This is from my experience, or what it is. Like, I think you guys are just coining something and you have a handle on it that's just much different. And I think people also, they probably don't realize, it's like the exclusivity of a player and the matchups of what they need to be for them to feel marquee for the community to grow. Then you have just a random other channel, which is all good and it's fine. But it's like, if someone's going to get a $500 up front to just go play some one-on-one, when it's like, why wouldn't I do that? Is that there needs to be a precedent set, or hopefully that you guys can set a precedent to where they can also understand to say, I might not take this up front. I would rather compete at the highest level on the next chapter to maybe get a contract, to maybe like truly be able to get and feed my family. Like, if this gets to a place, guys will really start to be able to feed their families. That's an insane concept. rather than $200 a pop and your brand goes down, like you said, every time you play. And it's like, for anybody to take money out of any man's hand to be like, listen, if I'm gonna go grab $500 to go play 1v1, it's like, you can't tell anybody to not do that. It's like, people sometimes need to do that. That's just what it is. But I am interested in like someone who, so I'm trying to think of like a good comparison, but it's like someone who's a boxer and they're street fighting for $500 a pop, and they might be incredible D1 level. You don't want to go to war 5 times a week in the street to get $500 a pop, because there has to be some sort of glass breakthrough to where you might not be Floyd Mayweather and go to the professional boxing realm. That might not happen for you. So how do you preserve your health while also, that's why in my mind it's important for the next chapter to become this UFC offshoot of boxing, is because you can still hold on to the integrity of raw basketball while feeding your family at a level that's not, I'm just playing 1v1s for $200 a pop to see what this is. And again, not that there's anything wrong with that. I just think someone has to be the one to break through the ceiling to present it in a manner that people are going to be really excited to sign with you guys and for it to become more of a thing, which is why I was like, oh, helping this monetarily is probably the only thing that's missing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at viewership as a whole, right, across the entire community of YouTube hoops, right, it's getting to that pivot point because everything is feeling so blended together. And everything can exist in its own space, in its own way, with its own styles. But when you look at a player, the one thing that I see happen a lot of times is somebody comes onto the scene. A lot of times they get a matchup that's just massive, right? It'll be a new guy playing against one of the top guys, and they win that game. And then once they win that game, now there's only like 2 opponents that the fans want to see you play. Everybody else, the 50 guys underneath you, they don't even care about. But I feel like the journey is better to start them at the bottom and watch them climb on step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And because of the demand of all the people that are in this community saying like, we want to see them instantly play this person, people are making these games happen. And then now that person's stale because there's nobody else, and they got to wait for everybody else to come up. And while they're stale at that point, they're still wanting to make money, so they're agreeing to keep playing a ton of people all over the space, but it's not putting them in the spotlight of superstar, because watching somebody go from the very bottom all the way up, that's what people get behind. So I think that's something that like we've protected, and so much so that last season we did was in June, and we've done 3 Warzone series since and gone to 3 other cities. And like we know, the Warzone series we're doing, they do nowhere near the viewership that a season will do, but we will 100% time and time again take that sacrifice on finding one person from there that can now step into a season and be another person to give longevity to a player that's been an OG in this space, right? Because without new guys coming in, like the OGs can't just keep playing each other. And I actually wanted, this question just came to my head. Okay, so in the music industry, if you're like a brand new artist and you drop a #1 song, is it like good to get a #1 song really early in your career, or does that make it really risky for like your next song? So I'm saying, like, if you don't line up another #1, do you think a lot of people will look at you and be like, oh, that was a fluke? Like something was fluke about that if you aren't living up to that #1 again?
Oh man, what a question.
Because you know, when a new person comes in out of nowhere and they have that #1 song, everybody wants to be the first one to find out about this new artist, and they're going to talk about them. And say they release something that's not on that level, and now they feel like...
Well, also the question is like, now, like, what is that level? I mean, this gets so meta so fast, but it's almost like you can't even control now the top comment of the guy who doesn't even listen to music. He just wants to have the #1 comment under the thing that's popular. So then you have fake divided opinions of someone who makes a joke about how bad it is and someone who makes a joke about how good it is, because 14-year-old Joey who works at McDonald's thinks that that's a way of being famous or something, having the top comment. So now you're having like forced narratives on songs that you can't even control. Like now you might drop a song and in the real world where other producers listening to it, the top guys in the world who put in their 10,000 hours are like, this is one of the best songs I ever heard. But some 17-year-old on a skateboard drinking ocean spray cranberry juice goes viral because of something that happened in the fucking da-da-da-da-da. And the top comment says, well, if the song wasn't so bad, he wouldn't have fell off the skateboard. funny, 11-year-old. That song sucks. When I go to the lunch table, the computer told me that my opinion is to say that it sucks because it looks like the culture is the top comment. Sorry. Huge,
that's
huge,
where
deep question.
That's where I was going.
But the YouTube basketball space deals with the same thing. It's like this virality and content and feed me and whatever. It's like you guys have to battle this this thing. So to be honest with you, if I'm not going to name any specific artists, but usually artists who've had hits will come to me. I haven't necessarily given somebody, I don't think ever, like a giant one that has catapulted them from their mom's basement to number one that they couldn't keep up with. But I could name you a bunch of people that, when you get, I wish I could say an artist's name, but I don't want to put anybody in like a one-hit wonder category. But there's a bunch of records you'll hear every year, and there'll be one. Put it this way: I'll hear songs on the radio that I didn't make, and I'll go, "Oh, you poor guy." It'll be the biggest song in the world, and I won't say, "Man, I wish I had a number one record like that guy." I will literally hear a song sometimes and be like, "Ooh, you poor guy. You'll never do that again," because sometimes you just stumble into the illest shit ever. That just resonates with the country, and it happens, and I'm like, ooh, they're never going to be able to do that again. And 9 times out of 10, they can't.
That's why I tie it back to stepping stones for the players as they grow, because you build that fan base early on that supports your albums and things like this, and then all of a sudden you have that breakthrough song. But if you just instantly get a game that puts you right at the top, your ceiling was that song.
Yep.
And you just think like being the number one player in YouTube and being the number 2, 3, 4, 5, that doesn't equate to how many views you can do. And at the end of the day, that's what's making the money, and that's what's getting you booked, and that's what's getting the support behind it. So there's a big disconnect of thinking that number 1 through 10 are going to be number 1 through 10 in views, but they might even be in the bottom 10 of views because they're not they didn't come up in a steady growth and have a fan base behind them. They just hop onto the scene and play a top-ranked guy, win the game, and now they're in that position. And
well, as the platform grows, it's almost like you guys, just like the UFC, it's like there's going to have to be a new concern for what fights you take and what fights you don't take. I mean, if you look at the fighting world now, it's the same thing. It's like Jon Jones versus X, and then Jon Jones has to take into factor, like, what do people expect from me? If I give a young guy an opportunity, there's going to be this this brand new drama, which is a perfect time for interaction and content and whatever for people to really pick and choose how they're going to take over the space in order for longevity, interaction, content, engagement. It's like you're right. It's like how you're going to play that will become its own business in and of itself. Because I know a lot of musical people who are way more talented than me, but some of them just don't have a sense on how to package it, how to put it together. There's all different forms of talent. I feel like you guys are going to have to, or players are definitely going to have to start to really put thought into, man, if I play Nas on XX and this, and I lose, what will that do for me? Which makes the 1v1s even more exciting because you're putting so much on the line in so many different ways. If you do play your cards right, To me, the thing that turns it into the UFC is the one guy willing to risk giant chunk of the bank account on what it is. And we could save this for the archives and when this comes out or whatever, but I was just shocked that no one's bet the bank on this yet. So I figured, why not me? So it's like, how much does it cost to do the pay-per-view? Because if you guys are constantly funneling, in my mind, it was if you're funneling into the next season and into the next season, into the next season, the leap might not actually ever happen. In order to get the proper streaming service that does the same thing as the Grammys, and they stream the Grammys, they stream NBA stuff, they stream House of Highlights, they stream live streams, well, that's going to cost a huge chunk. But are these players ever going to get their opportunity? Is Nas and Friga ever going to be able to do it on a stage where they can get what they've been deserving of to cash out with? Is that ever going to happen? I was talking to my wife about it. I'm like, they probably got guys doing that. They probably got guys knocking the door down where they understand the come up and they understand what they're looking at and they can see it from the seasons because in front of them you can see the growth. So I'm like, I shouldn't even call them. By the grace of God, y'all were in New York and whatever, but it was like, oh, this isn't gonna, they're fine. But I was like, you know what? They haven't put up a season in a long time. I'm like, maybe they're front loading everything And it just takes the mini Mark Cuban that happens to be successful in another industry to just come in and be like, you know what, there's an opportunity here, and the responsibility that you guys have had and the way you run your business and the way you've gone about it and done your best job to be transparent about what it is with the players and whatever, what does it cost to, so y'all just gave me the number. It's like, what's the number? It's like $300K, let's go. And we'll see what's after the pay-per-view. And there's a weird way of presenting this because it's not to say how much money I have. That means nothing to me. It's like, it's nothing to me. I don't need to like be like, I'm still down to earth and da-da-da-da. I still drive my Maxima from fucking high school. Bought the Tesla back just to stay hungry for this new album. Like, the money thing gets confusing. I want to make sure that that's not the big baller comes in and shows how much he has. It's not that. It's that, damn, you think about the D1 guy who ripped his fucking meniscus and never got the shot and heals up in 9 months, but his season's over. And the Cavs ain't calling. There's injustice there. If someone can finally get a redemption arc from that, even if it's a small 20% of the population at the D1 level, 2 level, and 3 level, who would have thought that you'd be as cold as you are in ones? I mean it. If I just went to a college game one day and just saw you play, I go up the road to Stony Brook. I watch people play all the time. You know how many good motherfuckers there are out there playing D1 level ball that'll never go into the league? What did you play? Was it D3, D2?
D3, yeah.
D3. And you would never. This guy broke old boy's ankle twice. It's some of the best YouTube content I've ever watched. But if I would have saw you at your school, I would have just thought, well, he's not going to go to the NBA, therefore he's not good. Therefore he's not valid. Therefore he's not exciting. You guys are changing the perspective on that entirely. That's why this deserves whatever the gas y'all need to put on the fucking fireball. I feel like I found a diamond in the street. Everyone's saying it's a rock. I'm like, is anyone gonna pick this shit up? It's got a little dirt on it, but this is a fucking diamond. Are y'all crazy? I'm not even trying to sell it. I'm looking at a fucking diamond. I'm calling other people. Yo, did you see that diamond? You're not interested in this? You own a shoe company? This is not interesting to you? What's happening? Literally in the street? That's getting documented every day? Can you call a guy named Freaky? Get me in contact with him. We meet in Brooklyn. It's like, what do you need? Y'all got the flame. I got some gas. Let's fucking go. And if I'll be the first one to be like, I believed in the beginning. Fine with me. 300K, 400, what the fuck you need? Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's what we're about to do. Like, it's an expensive upfront cost that we are 100% sure is going to shift everything. And pay-per-view comes with all the players getting paid good money because these are guys that deserve good money. Not just how many times can I get booked to go play a one-on-one this month so I can afford my rent. Like, no, this is get your money so that your 6 months of your rent is paid for. Get in the gym, train, make this the best day you've ever played basketball. And so that's going to be provided. The cash prizes across the pay-per-views, another $50,000 in cash prizes. So the season's $50,000 in cash prizes. Pay-per-views, $50,000 cash prizes. Then putting together the website and the streaming software we have. You know, we've mentioned several times on live, like we're with the same streaming partners that help put on the Grammys and the NFL and Fortnite and just all these other Epic Games events that they've had. And then, you know, our broadcast team is some of the best guys in the industry.
The head of our broadcast team is the head of the broadcast for NASCAR. So, like, you know, we are putting the money in the right place for this to be successful the right way. And you mentioned the payment thing. Like, most people, like, I don't know what Nas's number is, but to go out and play a YouTube 1v1, I'm sure it's maybe around 2,500 to 5,000, maybe 2,500. But to have him show up for a pay-per-view with 10K on the line, a percentage of the pay-per-view, and a 20K guarantee, that's something that deserves to be talked about.
I think it should be. I think it encourages anybody else who wants to be in the space that it can happen for anybody. Because like you said, there's great 5v5 players, but there's also guys who were designed for ones that don't even know they're designed for ones yet. They might be one of the best 1v1 players. There might be a D3 ball player who's nasty in fives, phenomenal basketball player, finds his stride midway through college, and ends up becoming one of the most viral, phenomenal to watch 1v1 players.
Yeah.
You are literally the poster child and proof of concept as why this shit is exciting as fuck.
Yeah. Think about how many D3 players make it to the NBA, and then
There's only been 1 or 2 ever.
yeah.
Bro, it's a hero arc, bro.
Yeah.
I root for you because I that's who I grew up with, is the D3 guy.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that we interact with. I don't really know too many guys that have gone to the league.
You said with like D1 guys that like tear up meniscus and then they don't get to the league. And this, we actually have a player playing this season, Scotty Lewis, played for the Charlotte Hornets, broke his leg, and lost his contract with the NBA and went overseas.
And the stock is crazy at the D1 level. It's like so and so selling jerseys at Duke, and they're the star player, and the Duke's making $400 million off of, you know, them signing autographs and putting their face on posters and whatever, and that's not my bag. The NCAA can figure that out. I'm glad they changed the rules for the athletes to get paid and whatever, that's fine. But at the end of the day, you tear your meniscus the year before you're supposed to go to the league in your senior year, and you made Duke $400 million, what the fuck do you have to show for it? You got to heal. It takes about a year. But if you're nice, you're nice. 40 years old down, 50 years old up, doesn't fucking matter. It's 1v1. It's like anyone can step up, which is why it's important for someone, it's fine being me, to fucking come in and make sure that you guys have an opportunity that the universe just needs to be like, all right, prop it up. Like, just go. It's fucking, it's fascinating.
I want people to understand that this is a money thing for players. At the end of the day, like, sorry. My whole point about that was, if the platform gets to where it has to go, a couple of things going right in your universe, you could make so much money off of one game. So much money. That's exactly what I was going to get at.
Bro, if that buys you a year of training, like even to play 1v1 at a low card, undercard level for the next chapter, if that gets you enough money to pay your rent for a year so you can go to the gym every day, that might end up giving you the skill set and the confidence to not have to go work a job at fucking McDonald's in order to go play overseas someday.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's almost like you guys are a farm system for dreams.
Yeah.
And I'm, again, not because I'm an investor, and I wouldn't have hunted you guys down and made sure that we spoke unless I really felt this way.
I think that we're going to have one game probably in the next like 5 years where somebody plays it and their whole like life is set after that because that one game.
100%.
Bro,
I just want to bring this point up really quick. Nas, this is our first ever pay-per-view live stream. Me being a part of the company, I'm not going to lie, I have no idea what the money looks like for me. The only thing I'm looking at is the prize money. Like if I win that game, when I win that game, I'm taking that prize money for sure. The rest, whatever, because I want to eventually, essentially grow this. So if we have to put everything back in on my side, whatever, doesn't matter. But take a guy like Nas, first ever main event. He's getting $20,000 guaranteed just to show up and play the game. $10,000 on the line. And then also gets a percentage of the pay-per-view sales. Knowing that this is going to do well, Nas at the minimum should walk out of this 30, 45-minute 1v1 with more than $50,000.
did he play D1?
He did at FAMU. Yeah, he played D1 at FAMU.
Now, that's Nasir Core. FAMU, played overseas in Romania or something like that. Like, yeah, people know him online, playing the Big Three, whatever, but he's not Kyrie Irving. He's not like these people with a huge name. But Nas can go make $50K in one night from playing one 1v1 game. Imagine what these people can make in a couple years from now playing against the Kyrie.
Any
or
point
playing
guard
against
who's out of a
Darius
contract that is not beholden to the NBA statute of limitations for whatever your attitude is or cursing or whatever you're under contract with the NBA to make sure that you can't get fined or whatever. A lot of guys who retire, they still have good years left in them. A lot of guys who leave the NBA simply because they just didn't get picked up or they went to the G League and it didn't happen for them. You know how many guys, even legends, that if let's say Nas, let's say Frika, let's say whoever, ends up becoming this consistent champion of a game called 1v1. It's just 1v1 basketball. It's this new era. You know how many lives could be changed if one of those guys, if a Kyrie, just, I'll play. Bing, 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 bing. I gotta watch that.
Yeah.
A guy, a D3 guy who raised up in the ranks and came up and off the proverbial streets of basketball came to go 1v1 with Kyrie Irving, and all it's going to take is just like, same thing as me from a fan standpoint, monetary investment, Mark Cuban, whatever thing. It's going to take the same thing for one of those chips to fall for one of those guys. The second the D Rose or the Wall or the Kyrie or whoever is the first pillar to break the fourth wall of the NBA, to be like, you know what? I'll go make $2 million in a night to play a 27-minute 1v1. I'll go do that. You know, my whole season is worth $2 million to me as an eighth man on the Charlotte Hornets. My whole season's worth $2 million. You know what? I'll go make my season in 2 minutes. You know what? Run it. Announce it on social media. The whole thing changes. Because then you got hungry D3 up to D1, even below, street guys, park ballers, the whole thing. Then you got those guys being like, oh my gosh, it's possible to get in front of one of those guys. Some of these guys might even change a guy's life overnight just from playing the game.
Yeah, I think we're also, we've talked about several times, like somebody from TNC is also going to go to the NBA at some point. They're going to see the talent that they have. It's going to be a 6'7" guy coming in playing ones that's just unstoppable.
Yep.
And the NBA calls him and brings him to the NBA. Like
and by the way, the NBA ain't stupid. If these guys' social presence are grown from the beginning of the next chapter, the NBA is not silly. If there's a guy who's an 11 out of 10 and a guy who's a 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10 has 0 following, and 10 out of 10 has 50 million followers, complete influencer in the space of basketball that will move tickets every night because of the access they have to the culture, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Someone can go to the NBA for sure. And the only difference is you guys don't have to hide behind the image of it's only the best, there's no politics here, there's no, because you guys are upfront and out loud about every single matchup, every single beef, every single thing, because you guys are able to be raw and unfiltered and honest about the approach of it. UFC. It's like, oh boy.
I mean, I played Mario Chalmers in a 1v1. Like, I know Mario would run it back.
Yeah.
I plan on calling him out after
Well,
the year or something.
you know,
Yo,
so-
is Beasley...
that's what I was
You
going
don't have
to
to put
say.
this.
Wait,
Is Beasley like
this
that
what-
nice?
So yes,
Beasley's good. Beasley.
He's almost like a myth in the sense of nobody's really seen him. He's like, oh, he's beating LeBron James. There's stories of him beating LeBron James. There's stories of him beating
KD.
There's all these stories about how good he is of a 1v1 player, but these are like probably like at practice, some shit got heated, they ran some ones, or maybe they're just working out, ran some ones. But like a guy like Michael Beasley, who the NBA neglected and painted such a bad image of who he was, but he's one of the greatest basketball players ever, but he never got to reach that level because of the way they portrayed him. He was too much for the NBA is what they were saying. He could be the number one 1v1 player in the entire world, making millions of dollars on Next Chapter.
Yep.
He will be.
And
So
and if
insane.
we like, the truth is, if we want to see Michael Beasley step outside, we're going to need a fat appearance fee for it,
Yep.
out of respect for what he's putting on the line and what he's bringing to us. But when we get Michael Beasley to play on there, like, we will prove to everybody that shit ain't a myth. We got to see some of it, him coming off of a foot injury, and he still looked ridiculous. So one day soon, I hope to give Michael Beasley that opportunity to, who knows?
If you guys could end up being the outlet for anything to get proven.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I can't say this in my contract for so and so in the NBA or overseas ball or whatever. It's like, take it to the next chapter. Take it to the next chapter. Take it to the octagon. Take it to the octagon. You're a tough guy, take it to the octagon. It's like, same thing with the next chapter. It's like, if Beasley is talking with Kyrie and they're both having some sort of conversation, it's like, bro, I'll take it. All right, next chapter, let's go. Where's the gym? Let's go. Call Scotty. Call Friga. It's like, if that becomes the natural place to take it to, because that's where people check for things to get proven. The next chapter is now the truth of basketball. You can't hide behind anything. You're going to have to go play, and it's going to end up being all over it online. You're going to have to put your money where your mouth is if you're a ball player.
What's so
really do.
important is, like, there's a lot of streaming companies that can take the concept of doing 1v1 and being like, all right, Kyrie, we heard on this episode that you playing Damian Lillard would make a ton of money. Okay, we want to present, but you're going to lose all that authenticity. Like, even how you saw Netflix streaming the fight and all this stuff, like, yeah, they're capable of streaming it, but like, the people that are doing it every day, all day long, because they're passionate about seeing it grow, that's the community where it's going to exist the longest. It's not going to just be this one-off, see how it does. Like, I think that people would be slightly displeased if it wasn't on TNC as an overall community for everything that we've done and sacrificed in that. And you said like $2 million. Dude, if Kyrie Irving played against yourself, I bet you he could get like a 30 mil bag off that.
30 mil.
You know how much that would, like, all right.
Bro,
if we did Kyrie 1v1.
A $50 pay-per-view card with 4 stacked undercards on that too, right?
We get Beasley on there.
If that's 100,000 tickets, what is that? That'd be 5 million there.
Yeah.
I don't think it's not Kyrie Irving's audience. If he found out he's playing a one-on-one, I think you could sell over 500,000 pay-per-view tickets.
And we do a press conference. We talk the shit. We go on lives. Like, we build it up. We do our job in telling the storyline. So it's not like
the promotion.
Kyrie Irving's playing a 1v1. Okay, great. Like, he's a good 1v1 player. No, it's like, this fucking social media dude thinks he can really beat Kyrie in a 1v1. He's talking crazy about him.
Exactly.
He's calling him out of his name.
Exactly.
And Kyrie's like, dude, you can't fuck with me. Like, I have rings. Like, I'm Kyrie Irving. He might not talk like that, but he doesn't need to. His fans are going to do that.
Yeah.
And so that banter, that storyline, that's what sells it. And then the game itself is obviously like the peak moment. And
people don't even realize the seasons that you guys are running now is HBO 247. 24/7, whatever the fuck it's called, between boxers. I'm fascinated by it. It's the days before, whatever. If the farm system for the pay-per-view is the season where stars arise, they earn their spot for this giant pay-per-view moment where all the shit talking that's happened in the Airbnb, all that shit can culminate into the pay-per-view. I just, like, for people, it's for people to not realize, like, as I'm watching season blank and the guys are in the house and they're talking, I'm going, people don't realize this is HBO 20. This is 247, 24/7. Someone's gonna correct me on whatever the fuck it's called. I'm like, they don't realize this is exactly what we're watching. It's just, again, you guys have such an opportunity to create more of a raw energy because no one is gonna slap you on the wrist for cursing. No one's gonna slap you on the wrist for acting a certain way because of the brand ties or the whatever.
Yeah.
How, again, it's very interesting. There's really no answer for it, but just like how you guys are going to balance that, it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be obvious if people make wrong decisions, the numbers are going to show for it, and it's
Exactly.
nobody else's fault but your fault.
Yes.
And we're willing to, if your numbers look bad, then transparently, that's just,
It is
if
what
you
it
did
is.
something that the fans really hate, that's on you.
Exactly.
It's not, we're not protecting a team, an organization, that's you as an individual. And yeah, like if this, well, when this first pay-per-view goes absolutely insane, because there's no reason you shouldn't, it's $20, right? It's $20. You're going to have 2 months ahead of time to find out about that. Save a quarter every single day leading up to it. Support this, because what's next for TNC with support, we've been talking, we want to get a gym, right? And that's one of the biggest challenges that we have right now. We're using other people's venues, other people's times. We got to buy out other businesses that have the gym rented. Maybe there's a basketball league that day. Maybe there's training that day. We got to pay extra money for all of that to be waived so that we can operate out of that gym. And for pay-per-view, we got to know months in advance because we got to set it up, coordinate everything. If we had our own gym, like the Keyshawn and Lat thing that happened in Warzone, we could have just been like, all right, fuck it. We'll do a pay-per-view next week. We'll like, this is a monster game. We'll live stream this next week. And, you know, it'll be a singular game. Okay, maybe $5 for the game or $10 for the game. And we might pull some undercards on that too. But us not having a gym at the moment is the biggest challenge that we're facing. We are operating on everybody else's leisure, what their time is. And some people don't like having a crowd. We go to all these cities and it's like, how many people are you going to bring? And it's going to be street ball. They hang up.
It's crazy.
They do not want to give us gyms while we travel. So it's like, I wish we had the money to either be like, we're coming in there and they're just like, yep, cool, money's good, boom. Or we just have our own gym and start a basketball league and be consistent and have tournaments, camps, showcases, everything, online training, like just be a huge, huge entity that feeds the basketball culture for all the guys that don't go to the NBA.
Yep.
So, were you familiar when Uncle Scoob and Nas had beef in the community?
No.
Okay, so there was a time, you remember that, when Nas was coming into the one-on-one scene and he was beefing with Scoob.
A little bit. Not
Publicly.
really.
It was one of like the hottest things to see happen. but the game never happened.
I was gonna say, I guess that's why I didn't think they
The
played.
game never happened, and through time, they eventually ended up making amends. Now they're business partners with Street Stars, but like that game, when all that beef was going down, if TNC pay-per-view was available, it would have been played. It would have been played because they're two massive figures. They wanted to make sure that the money was right on it. And we get too, like, if the money's not right and another platform is filming the game, posting the game, it almost feels like you're being used in that sense, where it's like, oh, I'm playing a game this big and I'm getting $1,000. Yeah, I know that the video is not making a ton of money. It's like, but if this is like my monster matchup and it can only pay me $1,000, like it kind of starts to make you not motivated and you're not interested in pursuing it. But if it's like someone's trying to come take my throne and I'm not getting 1,000 anymore, I'm getting 20,000 to protect this.
Yep.
Total different approach.
Totally different approach.
You got guys that show up to games like, yeah, they're outside, they're smoking before they play, they come into it, they're high, they're just not in the gym, or they're battling an injury and they're not telling anybody that they're battling the injury because they want to show up for the payment and they're trying to. It takes all of that out, because now if you show up and you're a little injured, or you show up and you're too high, or you show up and you didn't take it serious, if there's 20,000 on the line, your career might be over if you don't come prepared.
Absolutely.
And it puts a way different pressure on everybody's back.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's important about it, is not losing that competitive edge. And nobody's ever had the opportunity to train for one-on-ones like this before, because they just usually show up and play.
Yeah, and even now, to some degree, from you guys and every other channel, there becomes this where there's almost nowhere to go. There's almost no pinnacle like the NBA, of a league where there's an opportunity for somebody to make, like you said, life-changing money overnight. So again, it's like, why you guys making that jump is super important, is that there has to be a new level and a new level and a new level for that rise, if someone starts winning in the ones or whatever, to go to the holy grail, the next chapter moment, where you've developed so many followers, the shit talking, the beef, the fighting in the park, all the way to the first channel, to this, to this, to this, to this. It's like, you guys, it could be like the Ralph Lauren of the moment. And when that moment is constructed, and then people know to go there if you want moments, people are always going to be checking that channel to be like, oh, on Wednesday it's Kyrie versus Friga, I gotta see that. It's Julian Newman versus da-da-da-da-da. I wonder how that's gonna go. It's like, I might check that more than, the NBA on some nights. It's like watching X team versus X team on NBA TV. It's like, or Derrick Rose is coming out of retirement to play 1v1 game for blah 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 blah, and there's like, they're really talking shit and like pride is on the line. Like, I gotta tune into that. What an opportunity. But it's like, oh, if you guys are funneling every single dollar into each season, that jump might never happen. Yeah. So I was like, I almost feel a responsibility, because I just love the game of basketball. I just love the game. I grew up in the game to this day. It's a bunch of 30-year-old dudes, some band members of mine, or whatever. We're playing because we love the game. We're still drawing at each other. There's still drama. There's still Shakespeare levels of a play being played out. It's just like, I know that this pay-per-view is the jump. So, and again, not to be like, to flex or none of that, I really do feel honored to be the one to be like, let's give all of these guys an opportunity to really give themselves to have at least a shot to change their lives overnight. Because YouTube basketball it can't particularly do that right now.
I did want you to talk about your statement about people saying like, the NBA is free, why would we pay for this? If you want to elaborate.
Oh, yeah. No, I went on a little tangent on my Instagram like a couple weeks ago about like, I saw this response, and it was like, I'm always interested in the response of the pay-per-view, because I know not everyone's going to buy it. Like, us pushing a pay-per-view is not like, yo, we have 1 million subscribers. Like, dude, if we do a pay-per-view, 1 million people are going to buy this fucking thing. That's not the thought process. And I think that when we put out a pay-per-view and people think it's a fucking money grab, we're doing business. Of course we want to make fucking money.
Yep.
We want to make money for us to then build this, but we also want to make money so that guy can get paid what he deserves to play this game. But ultimately, I keep seeing these things about like, oh, like, I started watching you guys on YouTube because like this was free and it was good entertainment. It's YouTube. Like, I'm definitely not going to support the pay-per-view, but like, they're saying like, oh man, we don't even pay for the NBA. Like, you do, you know, at the end of the day, like whether it's like the cable you pay for, if you paid for NBA League Pass, like you paying for it somehow, some way. And I just think that it's so interesting, like, also that $20 breakdown on 5 games is like you're paying $4 a game. Technically you're paying $4 to watch me and Nas play. After everything that we're trying to promote and do, it's gonna be a good game. But I lost my, what am I trying to get at here?
To go off of the $4 a game, just to make that for one person paying $4, right? There's going to be 3 commentators. There's going to be a broadcast team of 4 people behind the scenes making sure the operation is going smoothly. There's the website that's paid for. There's the streaming time that's paid for. There's the 4 videographers on the court filming that has to be paid for. There's the 2 referees that have to be paid for. There's the cash prize, the flight, the hotel, all for you to just be able to see this live. If you want to see a game this big live, there's no way we could financially do it for free. So $4 a game, I feel like, is very, very, very reasonable, because to cover all those costs, you got to make money somewhere, like just to even break even on it. And just to go off of that, like,
I mean, we aren't getting away from YouTube. Like, our goal is not to be like, you know, we did our damn thing on YouTube and grew this audience, like, you know, meet us over here. We love YouTube. That's what built this platform. That's what we've always been doing. We've been doing this for 7-8 years now. Next Chapter might only be 2 years old, but like, our team's been in this space. And so we're not going anywhere from YouTube. We just want to use YouTube to leverage. We want to leverage YouTube to get people to the pay-per-view. But
in my like lowliest of low opinions, I just think you guys are experiencing the natural growth of, I mean, it happens to artists, it happens to rappers, it happens to, in my lowly opinion, I think what you're experiencing is the same as like everyone loves an underdog, and then they don't realize what the underdog represents when the underdog breaks through. Somebody has to break through to change the landscape of what it is. But then when someone's breaking through, they feel like they own you. So then they say, I liked it when it was free and you guys just like went to parks all day long. It's like, well, if 5,000 people show up to a park and, you know, there's danger and we can't afford the security, but we're dumping all of this money into blah, 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 blah. People don't understand, like, as this thing grows, there's just a growth that has to happen, and there's just going to be a growing pain, I think, of ignorance. Not ignorance in the sense of people would just love you guys to never make a dime. Keep loving what you do and make the same thing over and over and over again with no growth. Meanwhile, you have families to feed. There's like, tons of stuff. So it's like, at the end of the day, what it looks like or seems like, it's cool that you guys are taking a bit of heat for the pay-per-view, in my opinion, because you're in real time watching the attempt of, in 10 years, I think someone would be like, oh wow, that pay-per-view actually represented a lot more to random D2 guy who ended up making $2 million over his night and was able to feed his children off of this thing. Thank God they did the pay-per-view. Because there has to be someone to break through in order to establish it in a way that can change the landscape for potentially hundreds of thousands of players.
Yeah. And like you said, we don't expect every single person to buy this pay-per-view. And as you said, like, oh, I started watching this because it was free and it was entertainment. But like, we're directly talking to the people that have invested enough to understand the story of Next Chapter.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. This is like, so it's the same thing with when I went to the barbershop and someone gave me a mixtape. And back in the day, if it was, let's say it was G-Unit, and that's when 50 was selling actual mixtapes in barbershops, where he was actually selling them for $5 and $6 a pop. It's like, you expect 50 to be like, you know what, I'm cool with selling a CD that I burned myself for $5 a pop, and I'm just gonna stay here to just like remain true to something. It's like, keep selling music out of your trunk. It's like, I liked it when I went to the barbershop, and so I found the Next Chapter me. I found your guys' mixtape at the barbershop. I just went on YouTube randomly one day and was freely given this idea and introduced to this concept. But at a certain point, how long are you gonna sell mixtapes out of your trunk? You guys are leaving the mixtape out of the trunk era. Like, it was beautiful, it's what it was, and it will actually still remain because you guys understand where your roots come from, farming systems, G League concepts, the whole thing. It'll be preserved. It's just that there's a matter of, hey man, if I'm gonna give other people an opportunity, if I'm gonna build a business, and if I'm gonna get myself out of the situation that I'm in, I can't be selling mixtapes. I think people are, hey man, I found your mixtape at the barbershop. You were really plugged in, man. And it's like, you know what, you're right. I'm only gonna burn CDs and I'm gonna sell them out of a plastic bag and just only do cash and you can send it to me. You're a real one. It's like, great, I get to die a real one. Like, thanks for really, like, I stayed low enough for you guys to believe that I'm believable in what I'm doing. It's like, get the fuck out of here. That's just my take on it.
Yeah.
But
businesses that don't innovate die.
Absolutely. And I think you guys are just experiencing what it's like when a rapper blows up. When an artist blows up. He changed, he this. You understand what they're dealing with in order to present an archetype, to give people the tools to create something of an avenue for people to be successful. It's a hard thing to do. And when the first guy over the hill in war catches all the arrows, so he's going to be the one to catch the most arrows. It's the first guy over the hill. That's my take on it.
Mm-hmm. I could take a few arrows.
If you don't have people hating on your craft, you're probably doing something wrong.
I agree. To me, it's an obvious proof of concept. Like I said, I found the diamond in the street that everyone's like, nah, it's a rock. I'm like, that's a fucking diamond. Anyone else, I might get the crazy one. Sometimes I feel crazy. So it's the same thing with the pay-per-view. It's like, all right, $300K for the pay-per-view. It's like, the second I get that back, what about a gym? How can we set up the stage in a different way where this is consistent and we can, what's the next move? You know, and I think this is so fan-driven that this pay-per-view represents more than just how successful can it be. It represents the entire future of what this thing is going to end up looking like for how people's lives can be changed through the game of basketball. That's not just the NBA. So it's like, it's not that if you really believe in the next chapter, you'll spend your money on this pay-per-view. I don't mean it like that. I just mean you are now watching the proof of concept in real time. And it's interesting to see how many people are actually going to recognize it as that, to say it's time for the mixtapes to stop me selling out the trunks. It's time for that. I wonder how many fans are going to plug into it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And upon that, listen, what's after that?
This first pay-per-view is successful because of your support. Everything that we've ever done, we've always put back into the company for the greater good of the progression of the company and the people that are part of it and the athletes. This pay-per-view does well. We will continue to push the limits and go to the next thing, whether that's a gym or another pay-per-view with NBA people, with your sole support, and we need your support, the people that are the diehard fans out there. We will make this one of the biggest things in basketball ever.
To all the incredible supporters of the next chapter, this is it. We've devoted our lives to creating a new basketball outlet where dreams don't just survive, but they can thrive. What we're doing is bigger than basketball. It's about providing a stage for the athletes and a vision for the future. We've made it this far, but it has not been easy, and we need your support now more than ever to take this to the next level. Our upcoming pay-per-view on February 1st is a defining moment for TNC. For just $20, you're going to get to watch 5 live stream games on our brand new website, tncleague.com. Everything's in place. The games, the stories, the production, and the players. All that is left is for you, our supporters, to show up and show your support. Let me be very honest with you. Many believe that the videos you watch for free on YouTube are funding our vision, but that is far from the reality. YouTube is our home and it is our place to connect with you. But the truth of it is, it does not generate the revenue that's needed to consistently deliver you guys the content that you love. Our last season was filmed 8 months ago, and this new season would not have been possible if it wasn't for Jon Bellion stepping in and helping us out financially. This pay-per-view is not just an event, it's the key to growing and sustaining the next chapter. The revenue from your support will allow us to shorten the long breaks between seasons and series and give you guys even more content for free on YouTube. By purchasing this pay-per-view ticket right now with the link in the description going to tncleague.com, you're not only securing your spot, but you're giving us the confidence to enhance this event and make it even better than it's already going to be. We're being as transparent as possible because we value your trust. Chapter 2 Season 1 has already been filmed, and the money for this event has also already been spent to make it happen. For those of you who know you're going to support the next chapter and buy a pay-per-view ticket, we strongly encourage you to do so right now if you have $20. Early purchases give us the certainty to plan and potentially add even more to the event. Every like on our YouTube videos, every purchase of a pay-per-view ticket, every time you share our content, it'll all make a difference. When you all rally behind the video of Latin scoring 85 points and you spam the like button, you can see, look at the viewership. You guys have the power to change the entire future of the next chapter and what it means for all of these players. Just imagine what we can achieve together if you take that same energy and you apply it throughout the entire Chapter 2 Season 1 and the pay-per-view. Let's make Chapter 2 Season 1 the best yet. We are grateful of each and every one of you. We love you all. Let's make this happen. Peace.